Our hearts are like sacred flowers, so often closed, even as we long for some warm, illuminating power to open us. Music can open us. It can ease its way into our bloodstream and oxygenate our soul. Nature can move us, mesmerize and amaze us with its limitless imagination and staggering beauty. In the song we heard earlier, the songwriter had his heart-opening epiphany on a walk in a garden, with no words having been spoken. Maybe these are the best sorts of awakenings, but for most of us mere mortals, they remain elusive. Too often, with words, only the mind is involved, admiring a pretty phrase or pondering a profound puzzle. Once in a while, when we're very lucky, when our minds are weary enough to allow our hearts to listen, words move us on a deeper level, and our sacred hearts open, if only a little, to receive their welcome message. Yes, words can sometimes reach us, in a way few things do. In the course of my free and responsible search for truth and meaning, I find myself encountering a lot of words. I constantly have my face in a book, looking for some unique and powerful morsel of wisdom that sets me free from all the useless BS I've been lugging around since, well, forever. I'd love to announce to you that I've fully apprehended some great pearl of wisdom and am now free of all ego-driven hang-ups, free to roam blissfully about the planet, spreading only compassion, unity, and sublime inner peace. Unfortunately, I can make no such claim. However, I can say that I've unearthed a few fragments of word wisdom along the way that have helped me move forward in my quest for inner liberation, even as I openly admit that I have a long, long way to go. I'd like to share a few of them with you. I hope that you may find something in them that is helpful in your journey, whether yours is a spiritual or a philosophical journey or some combination of both. For many of you, these insights may be old friends, while some of you may not agree with them. Either way, they might open the door for profitable conversations. So let's dive in. The first insight is this: you are not the voice in your head. For most of us, the mind is a very busy place. It's constantly judging things and people as good or bad. It's a harsh critic, often most especially harsh when it comes to evaluating its owner. So often that voice is jam-packed with negativity. It's telling us we're not smart enough, not good-looking enough, not successful enough, not confident enough. It's narrating our lives, telling us the story of us. It likes to remind us how unfair the world has been to us and how unlikely it is that we'll ever live our dream, or for that matter, get anywhere near it. It's important to realize that this voice is frequently distorted and misinformed, and it's often just plain wrong, though the ego wants to insist otherwise. We automatically dwell in the world of thought, and our minds can easily become, as author and teacher Sadhguru calls them, misery manufacturing machines. If we aren't watchful, our minds can keep ancient pain alive, often magnifying it way out of proportion to reality and making the present a very unhappy place to be. Eckhart Tolle, in his book The Power of Now, puts it like this. This is a long passage, but stay with me. It's not so much that you use your mind wrongly. You usually don't use it at all. It uses you. This is the disease. You believe that you are your mind. This is the delusion. The instrument has taken you over. The beginning of freedom, Tolle writes, is the realization that you are not the possessing entity, the thinker. Knowing this enables you to observe the entity. The moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. You then begin to realize that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. that thought is only a tiny aspect of that intelligence. You also realize that all the things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, arise from beyond the mind. You begin to awaken. All cravings, he goes on to say, are the mind seeking salvation or fulfillment in external things, and in the future, as a substitute for the joy of being. As long as I am my mind, I am those cravings, those needs, wants, attachments, and aversions. In that state, Tolle writes, even my desire to become free or enlightened is just another craving for fulfillment or completion in the future. So don't seek to become free of desire or achieve enlightenment. Become present. Be there as the observer of the mind. Instead of quoting the Buddha, be the Buddha. Be the awakened one, which is what the word Buddha means. David R. Hawkins, M.D., in his book Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender, expresses this idea of thought versus awareness beautifully with this analogy. Thoughts, he writes, are like goldfish in a bowl. The real self is like the water. The real self is the space between the thoughts, or more exactly, the field of silent awareness underneath all thoughts. I personally find it freeing to consider that I don't have to take that ceaseless voice in my head too seriously. I don't have to allow it to emotionally hijack my every waking moment. I am not that voice. I am, as Hawkins says, the silent field of awareness underneath all thoughts. By the way, if your mind is giving you positive messages, it's still not who you are, but at least it's acting like an ally and not a ruthless attorney for the prosecution. It may mean that you are able to see your innate goodness and innocence, that pure, radiant, and peaceful state of being in which you arrived in this world, clearer than most, and that's a good thing. This idea, then, of disidentification with the mind is about our movement from human thinking to human being. Like the game Othello, it takes a minute to learn, but a lifetime to master. The second insight is this: the only real thing you have is now. Or, as Jon Kabat-Zinn says in his book Full Catastrophe Living, you only have moments to live. This sounds like a dire warning of impending doom, but what the author is getting at is both less scary and more profound. The past is no more than an idea in your head. It has no real substance. The same is true of the future. The past is memory, the future is imagination. It isn't necessarily bad to recall the past or contemplate the future, but when we do, it's very hard to truly appreciate the only thing that actually is real. Our most precious possession. Now, this moment. When we're driving down the road or packing a lunch or taking out the garbage, most of the time our minds are elsewhere, aren't they? We're already wondering what kind of mood the boss is going to be in, or we're hoping our tax refund has shown up at the bank, or we're thinking we didn't get enough sleep last night, or worrying about that thing we said to our close friend. It goes on, right? It isn't that those things don't matter. They may matter very much, but usually there's a time to deal with them, a time when it will be particularly important. In the meantime, as we obsessively think about them, we are missing so very much of what is happening right in front of us. We are forgetting to be present, failing to occupy that most precious commodity, this moment. Kabat-Zinn writes, mindfulness is not about forcing your mind not to wander. That would just give you a big headache. It is more about being aware of when the mind is wandering, and as best you can, and as gently as you can, redirecting your attention and reconnecting with what is most salient and important for you in that moment, in the here and now of your life unfolding. Our senses are one way to practice being present. If we tune in to the world around us, take in what can be seen, heard, felt, smelled, and tasted, really take it in, then we are connecting to the here and now. The practice of meditation is another way to bring awareness to the present moment by continually bringing it back to the breath, which constantly renews itself in the now with inhalations and exhalations, the very rhythm of life. This second insight, like the first, is not difficult to comprehend, but it is a serious challenge to implement and stay consistent with. The third and final insight: accept what is. This sounds obvious and deceptively simple. It's important, though, not to mistake acceptance for resignation. Let's take an unhappy job situation. Accepting that right now my job situation is bad is not the same as deciding it can never be any different. You can actively look to solve the problem where you work, or actively look for another job if that's possible and realistic. But constantly carrying a 16-ton weight of resentment is a very unhealthy reaction that is only going to make a bad situation far worse. It's amazing what kind of inner turmoil we can generate, pouting, fuming, or fantasizing about revenge. We can literally make ourselves sick with this kind of thinking. Or we can calmly say to ourselves, this is what is happening right now. I accept it as it is in this moment. It doesn't have to make me miserable. I can be okay inside myself, even in the midst of this undesirable circumstance. Kabat-Zinn writes the following about acceptance. Acceptance does not mean that you like what has occurred or that you are merely passively resigned to it. It does not mean capitulation or surrender. The way we are using the word here, it only means that you admit the bare fact that whatever has happened has already happened and is therefore in the past. More often than not, acceptance can only come with time, as the storm plays itself out as the winds die down. But how much healing takes place after the devastation depends on how much you are able to be awake, face the storm's energies, and observe them with wise attention while they are raging, however painful that may be. Profoundly healing insights may arise, Kabat-Zinn writes, if you are willing to look deeply into your emotional pain as it is occurring, as well as in its aftermath. One major realization you might come to is the inevitability of change, the direct perception that, whether we like it or not, impermanence is the very nature of things and relationships. This principle applies to all areas of life. The question is, can we arrive at acceptance of what is, even if we don't particularly like it? If we can, we will save ourselves a lot of unproductive suffering. So the three insights are these. You are not the voice in your head. The only real thing you have is now. Accept what is. I offer these little fragments of word wisdom to you because they've been very meaningful for me. These are things I'm working on, not things I have so far earned any trophies for fully accomplishing. I see them as worthy goals, and practicing them, even some of the time, has helped me to lessen the extent to which I operate as my own worst enemy. Life will deal hardship. There will be struggle, loss, and suffering. As you continue with your free and responsible search for truth and meaning, I ask you to consider the possibility that lessening your identity with thought, learning to be more present, and accepting what is, might just make going through challenges a bit easier. May it be so.